Welcome to the Brand Intelligence Podcast, the show where we pull back the curtain on some of the world's smartest brands. I'm your co-host, Tessa Court, and today we'll be talking about how to improve marketing content workflow through MarTech consolidation. Joining me today is my co-host of this podcast, IntelligenceBank CMO, William Tyree. So William, let's dive right in. So you joined IntelligenceBank as CMO about 9 months ago, and you do have a perfect job in the sense that you are marketing to marketers, and it's like, I think the best job in the world, being able to do that and to be your own, target market. But in doing so, in your last couple of roles, you were in a very, very different situation to the situation you're in now, where with Intelligence Bank, you are working with our own product where you have an integrated DAM online brand portal and creative briefing and approvals capability all in one. And after several months using Intelligence Bank as not only the marketer of the product, but also a customer, you wrote an article discussing the content marketing productivity gains you've seen using a consolidated approach to platform. And could you tell us a little bit about the kinds of content your teams have been producing past and present, and why is this concept of MarTech consolidation so important?
Hey, Tessa, to dive right in, I've had a lot of marketing tools, just like every marketer out there, a pretty big marketing stack. But like most marketing teams out there, I didn't really have a proper digital asset management system or a brand portal before. I'd say, past and present, a lot of the same things that other people are producing, right? My team produces ads, product videos, product tours, implementation guides, a bunch of sales enablement. I'm really big on original research. I think that really works. If you can put out original research that really helps your customers improve their lives somehow, web experiences, buyer templates and tools. So like all kinds of different things in different mediums, I would say. I think in the past, I had to have a pretty robust MarTech stack. And I think my theory on that was that less would be more. And I'm happy that it turned out that way.
Yeah, you're in the unique position that, as a CMO, you're actually marketing to yourself in a weird way. So you do experience the pain firsthand. I guess if you think about your role as a CMO and for other CMOs, can you think about a couple of things that you think are critical about increasing content productivity? And so obviously one is MarTech consolidation, of course, but can you tell us about what you were using before and what you're using now, and how has that changed in terms of efficiency and also brand compliance as well? Because obviously when you're working in zillions of tools, it's hard to control the beast, if you will. And I think AI is making it, I guess, the production of content just at a rapid rate.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So let me put the tools into a bunch of categories, and just fair warning, I'm going to mention brand names, but I have to say that all these brands, they do at least one or two things really, really well, right? I think it's just like, for me, it's just like wanting to do a lot of things well in one solution, right? So that's kind of my disclaimer here. But for content storage, big pain point in the past, because I think that it's taken a while for platforms like IntelligenceBank and other platforms to do a lot of different use cases well, right? So in the past, I've had things for example, video used. Like there's a great product out there called Wistia. It's great for asset storage, collaboration, things like that. But the problem is that the thing that it does well, it's not good for all the other things you're doing. So for asset storage, used everything from that to like Airtable to Salesforce to Box. Why Box? Well, because Box had object recognition, face recognition, which was really good. And even HubSpot. So I think depending on the use case, I needed in the past a different asset storage solution, depending on the use case and the type. On top of that, I mean, for project management, everything from like Jira to Trello to Asana. For reviews, like everything under the sun, what I would say is I think the tool that designers always want to do reviews in, or often want to do reviews in, is Figma, which is a great creation solution for sure. I've often seen other people just can't deal with the content collaboration in Figma unless you are a designer. For templating, everything from like Canva to Adobe, distribution, Slack and email, and that's just like a fraction of it. honestly. And
It kind of
I'm
sounds
also,
like a nightmare,
I'm
though.
also,
If I just reflect for a minute on where you said your assets were being stored, I mean, that was across 5
yeah,
different tools, and to me, that's where the risk becomes in because people start
right.
using content that's off brand, and it's difficult to track if you have any sort of talent usage rights or anything that you're using that you shouldn't be. And also, there's duplication because if the web team or the digital team is not talking to the a PR team or whatever else, that becomes even more challenging because you're duplicating production all the time.
You're totally right. And I mean, here's how this stuff happens. What happens is your team, maybe your team starts out producing a bunch of like PDFs and web experience, things like that. You don't have a lot of video production going. So you're totally good using one of the other solutions I mentioned. But then you start producing tons of video. And guess what? The solutions that you have don't tolerate video or don't observe it or don't handle it really well. So you need a solution for that, right? And so you end up adding solutions that can complement those use cases that you accumulate over time. And then that's where you get a bloated tech stack. It's just content development, approval, distribution, workflow, right?
And that's really where I think, there's definitely an argument in Real Story Group talks about this all the time where you have these ginormous applications that purport to do everything and they can't. And so then you get a wave back to best of breed. But if the best of breed
Yeah.
can't integrate and talk to each other, it does also become a problem. And the way that I like to think about it is that, and I guess our mission at Intelligence Bank, kind of how we think about it, is that you want to have at least that workflow in terms of content creation and what is that assembly line of things that you need to do, I guess, as part of that in terms of the creation, the approval, and the storage and distribution. Consolidate as much as possible in one place. If you do need to connect to third party applications, let's make that easy for customers. So whatever they're using, things can talk back and forth. And I think that's super critical.
I completely agree. And actually, speaking of that, to kind of stay on project management for a minute, you know, in the piece, I list a bunch of time wasters that come from having a supposedly best in class tool for everything. But I think project management is one of the things that tops my list. And here's why. There's some amazing project management tools out there. And I understand why they need to be so robust, so flexible, so endlessly scalable, all that. But the problem is, unless you really have a tool that is built for content teams, you're going to have a project manager on your team who completely goes rogue and starts over engineering the processes essentially. And then that's when your team starts getting out of their routine. So over the years, just like it's so not uncommon, unfortunately, to hear, like, yeah, I couldn't find that asset in the task that you assigned me. It's in one of the subtasks or one of the subtasks. Didn't you see it? Somebody says, oh, we're starting to use epics now for this. And I'm just like, oh, that's really better for engineering.
Yeah.
So I just, for you really need something where the process is streamlined and always the same, and that your team everybody on your team is on the same page and uses that same process. So for me, that's number one. I think the second thing is context switching, right? There's, I mean, so many studies out there in the world from psychologists, but also Gartner and other places talking about the loss of productivity when your team's constantly going through this. I think, we named a couple tools before that are great tools in themselves, but for the most part, I think video producers know how to navigate Wistia. Designers know how to navigate Figma. And anytime you bring other folks into those tools for review and collaboration and things like that, it's a time waster for them. And every single time they're switching between these solutions, it's really, really hard. We all have to go between a certain amount of solutions between integration, but the amount of context switching that you can cut down on, I really feel is big. I think the third one that we haven't really talked about, you touch on brand compliance for me, is the brand portal. And this is a really big one for me because it's been a pretty big pain point. Like, I love a good channel marketing program, good channel partner program. And ultimately, if you really get some deal flow going, one of those partners is going to say, hey, can you set up a place where our team could just easily grab all the access stuff so that we're not sending them over email? Great, right? That's awesome. But ultimately, I think we as marketers tend to have so many tools for everything from marketing automation to intent data to ABM. And on top of that, the last thing that you think that you need necessarily is yet another tool for that. And so what happens is SharePoint starts getting used, like you start standing up like WordPress sites for those partners until you figure out that all the maintenance for all the plugins and the version control and all that starts becoming a big deal. And I have to say, I love that about IntelligenceBank. I love how you can get all the other stuff we talked about and are really easy to set up, drag and drop if you need it. Brand portal right there. And guess what? You don't even have to tell your team to move it out of your DAM to your brand portal because it's all part of the same system.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really interesting point there as well around maintenance. So I think when you implement any software at the start, it's perfect. It looked great, a lot of attention. There's a team that goes into it. But as software becomes embedded and you have other projects that the marketing team is working on, or even change managers in an organization are working on, it's easy to sometimes forget the existing technology that you have. I
Yeah.
truly believe that the more integrated, whether you're talking about IntelligenceBank, DAM brand portals, or briefs, or whatever it may be, if it's not maintained, it just kind of can easily become irrelevant and not as useful. So I think when people are even going to look for software, it's super important that it's resourced as well. So it's not like the software isn't going to magically fix everything, but it's really important that the maintenance is there. And then the more integrated something is with everything they're doing. So for example, like we see, as we know, a lot of clients, they'll have, because the brand portal is integrated with their DAM and campaign management.
You're totally right. People absolutely underestimate the maintenance of all those things. Absolutely. That's one of the things that I was thinking about a little bit. Actually went back and I looked at the frequency of meetings I had on marketing. Because I think as a CMO, of course, you're going to spend a ton of time with your marketing team. You have to, right? And it's good for everybody, but you're also across a lot of other things of the business. And I was looking at the sheer number of meetings before and after. And I noticed, like, I felt like there was a stark difference, but then when I went back and actually looked at my calendar between roles, it's really big. I kind of drilled in and I was thinking, what are the things that I don't need to meet about anymore? And I think one of the things is the process of having a system that does standardized briefs really well and holds the team accountable for making sure that the briefs are good. It's great for designers, but ultimately it's good for everybody. And it's good for me as a person who reviews a lot of content as well, because if people are doing a better job briefing, then the output is a lot more predictable. So I think that's a really, really big one for me. Is that something that you've heard from our customers as well?
Yeah, I think all marketing departments right now are really striving to create efficiencies in everything they do. So you touched on briefs and having standardized briefs or workflows for even approving a brief and then the assets that are attached to that brief. We've seen clients who it used to take them 8 to 10 days to approve one piece of creative, which is insane. That is just so slow. Where using the standardized process that we provide gets them down to 2 and sometimes 1 day, do that. So I think that time efficiency piece is super important. And, I think what's happening in marketing as well is that there's more demand on marketing than ever, especially with all the technology that marketing does use and the niche targeting, not to mention all the AI capability. And so being able to condense the need you have to meet with individual people on your team and use technology to substitute meetings and also to enable your
Yeah.
team to self-serve is really, really important.
I think the other things that stand out for me as big difference makers are digital markup improving. It just like The old saying, pictures, words. I mean, basically, I think that's a big meeting eliminator right there. It's just the ability to easily go in on the same task on the same card that you assign a task comes back to you, or in an approval module, perhaps, and the ability to go in and take a mark it up, or add revisions, and sometimes just say like, yes, this is awesome. Let's do more of this, or let's standardize this piece in the future. It's just the communication in that one place is really great. I think that's a big one. I mentioned before that I had to use Box for a little bit because it was the only platform I could find at the time outside of maybe Amazon that had really good object recognition, face recognition for assets. And that's another big one for me because the more you use it, the fewer where is this questions. Everybody in marketing needs to be able to go and say, hey, I want to just pull up all pictures of people on beaches and have that come up really fast, as opposed to manually looking through it. And that's honestly like a pretty minimal use case. There's so many other more robust use cases for it as well. But I think that asset intelligence, and that's the big piece of the AI assisted workflow, a lot of people out there can harness.
Yes, definitely. In terms of other advice that you give marketing leaders to improve content workflows and productivity gain, what are like the top couple of golden nuggets you have to help others in achieving better efficiency and also brand compliance at the same time?
Having a bunch of different tools, right? But I really think that the one place for content collaboration, reviews, approvals, versioning, distribution, all that, it's such a big time saver. And the other thing it does is it creates a level playing field for your entire team, right? So you don't have that video producer who's saying that you need to log into the video software to do anything, right? Which is a big time waster and also just not that efficient, frankly, because the tool wasn't maybe made for that. I think that essentially the more that you can combine every piece of workflow into one place is great for those reasons. The one thing we haven't talked about as well, though, is just as a marketing leader, is fewer vendors for you to deal with because, it takes time not only to negotiate renewals if you want to renew, but also to absorb all the best practices content that they're pushing toward you. They're pushing content toward you all the time and like, hey, here's something new we released, all of that. And it's just like less is more there because that way you can, if you have a smaller stack, you can actually make better utilization and keep up with what works in the tools that you have as opposed to being spread too thin. What are the best use cases that you've heard of from our customers along these lines?
Yeah, sure. So I guess a lot of customers, when they come to us, there's either two scenarios. One is they have a piece of software that's not big enough. So they might have a DAM that doesn't integrate with a brand hub or creative brief. And they find that obviously frustrating because they want every tool that you have to do more than one thing is, I guess, is the idea. So that's one thing. Or people come to us from chaos. So they're using tools like Dropbox and Box, which are awesome tools, but they're not really geared for creative content. I think for those sorts of clients, it's important to provide that integration piece and really think about the content marketing workflow, not just solving one piece of the puzzle. The second thing that the theme for a lot of our clients is really, and I love this quote from Stephen Covey, starting with the end in mind. So thinking about the key metrics for reporting, like what do you need to get out of your tool and how do you prove that it's been effective? And for our marketing operations clients who are using digital asset management, creative workflows, brief approval, creative template, it really boils down to three things. At the end of the day, people want to know how have we created efficiency and reduced our time to approve? That's the number one metric. The other one is where are the bottlenecks in the organization? So overdue approval. And then also ensuring that people are following the process. So a really easy way to do that is ensuring that every brief is approved and every asset that is associated to that brief is also approved. So you can really look at your campaign compliance and ensure that people are using the system for online creative briefs, for instance, and not writing briefs on the side of a napkin, as an example. So that's the second thing. And I guess the third thing to mention is, are you able to easily audit your process? And are you able to get the data out of your system to show if it's working or not? And that's the other thing that's, of course, really important for us internally and then also all of our clients.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And we hear that over and over from customers too, especially those in regulated industries. So audit trail is great for you as a manager, but it's pretty much a must have if you're in a regulated industry that requires government compliance for sure. So I would just say, if you're like me, you're a marketing leader, you need to get more productivity out of your team and you want less chaos in your life. And if you're looking for fewer vendors to manage, I would encourage you to go to IntelligenceBank.com and check out our customer stories because there's some great ones.
So that's it for today's episode. And thank you so much for joining me, William. And thanks for tuning into the Brand Intelligence Podcast. For all those who are listening, we hope you enjoyed the episode. Please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And to learn more about Intelligence Bank and to find out more episodes, visit us on IntelligenceBank.com.